This man is not an actor. He doesn't know he's in a movie and has no idea that he's in a scene with a major Hollywood star.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
For what? For work?
Scarlett's character was interacting with real people who were completely unaware that they were in a fictional film.
Do you want to live?
Why not?
It felt very genuine. You know, we were a part of the environment that we were in, and so it's a blurred line between the reality and illusion.
The character she's playing is an alien who's just arrived on this planet and taken a human form with the only purpose of trapping men into a dark, mysterious void. So she has to learn how we speak, how we behave, how to blend in, and most importantly, how to interact with us. But this wasn't going to be just another sci-fi or just another horror. To Jonathan Glazer, who co-wrote and directed it, it had to be grounded in reality, way more than anything we've seen before. And the only way to do that was to almost treat it like a documentary.
We wanted to just witness, really, her behavior, and so having her in disguise, driving, trying to select, hunt, and pick people up. That felt like that needed to be done for real.
That idea was so important that they even wrote it into the screenplay. It was about observing her in real situations. But how do you take one of the most famous actresses in the world and let her roam the streets of Glasgow completely undetected? And how do you capture it all without interfering? Throughout the movie, there are 4 different locations that each required a new approach. For the driving scenes, for example, the kind of cameras they needed didn't quite exist yet. Small enough, yet good enough. So out of necessity, they had to custom build their own. To make it work, they essentially turned the van into a mobile film set, with 8 of the cameras hidden around it and the crew members monitoring from the back. The idea was to give Scarlett Johansson a complete freedom to decide on her own where she drives, who she talks to, and what she says.
You know, I knew what my motivation was or where my end point was, and then I just had to kind of figure out how I was going to get to where I needed to go.
It needed to be completely random. So if, in other words, Scarlett turned left and she'd honk her horn and she'd talk to a guy on his way to McDonald's, and that conversation would happen. If she turned right, she'd meet a guy on his way home, and that would happen.
Unlike conventional filmmaking, there were no retakes, no resets, and no predictability.
Things happen in an organic kind of a way that could never happen if they were scripted. That is terrifying, but it's very thrilling at the same time.
For this scene here, a normal production would just lock down the entire street and fill it with a bunch of background extras, but doing so would completely defeat the purpose. So every single person in here is just going on about their business. And to capture it all, they filmed it from a moving car, a shop across the street, and for this angle, an apartment building where the crew was hiding. The only thing that was planned was that she was going to fall down, and as soon as she did that, anything could happen.
I think we had about 6 or 7 takes throughout the day. You know, we'd have to wait a period of time in between each take for kind of life to settle again. And it was amazing the different reactions that you had from people. Some people would just stop and look at you and continue to walk on. Others would come rushing. Then another take, people would take pictures of you with their camera phone and not help you.
This worked on multiple levels because, yes, not only did they capture real people with genuine interactions, but it also gave Scarlett Johansson a chance to fully sink into her role. Nowadays, more than ever, actors appreciate having something tangible to react to, and many directors will go out of their way to make their sets feel as authentic as possible. But you can only do so much on a soundstage. So coming from The Avengers, a movie with a ton of green screen and CGI, this was about as immersive for an actor as it gets, and the scene in the nightclub might have been one of the trickiest to pull off.
Initially that was a kind of, you know, why are we not doing this the conventional filming way? You know, we're shooting in a nightclub, why do we not just fill it with extras? It suddenly became like a real challenge, but also a kind of unique way of working, which actually made it even more exciting.
Considering it was a real club with real people in it, they had to plan it meticulously. Days in advance, they scouted the location and mapped out the beats, basically a few key checkpoints for Scarlett to hit. Based on that, they figured out where and how to hide the cameras. And when it came time to film, it was about running the same scenario over and over again, but trying things out with different people. Speaking of which, as you're watching the movie, the line between fiction and reality is constantly getting blurry. The few people who were actually cast in it had little or no acting experience at all.
A couple of people have said to me, who's cast and who's not cast, and let's leave it at that. You know, that's exactly where you want it to be, because it means that the unity of those ingredients is in check.
Now let's zoom out to the bigger picture. This wasn't exactly the first time something like that had ever been attempted. You have, for example, those old hidden camera TV shows going all the way back to the 40s, and then of course movies like Bruno and Borat. But what makes Under the Skin so unique is that it wasn't just a gimmick, it wasn't a prank, and it wasn't done just for the sake of it. Quite the opposite actually, it was a crucial part of the plot. In it, our planet is the alien planet. We are the aliens. And to get that perspective, it was important for people to not know they're being observed. And ironically, doing it with a major A-list celebrity only added to the layers of the movie. Like, you may be wondering, how could they possibly not recognize her? But if one of the highest paid actresses in the world, who also happens to be crowned as the sexiest woman alive, twice, just randomly pulled you over in a van and hit on you, would you believe it? The same way that if your gut feeling and all your instincts were screaming that there was an actual alien in front of you, would you convince yourself it wasn't true? Although I swear, sometimes when I read my comments, when I saw the movie for the first time, I couldn't decide if I really liked it or really did not. It was honestly a little bit of both. And unsurprisingly, it had people divided. As Scarlett Johansson said in an interview after a screening, when the lights came up, there was this sound of people cheering and booing at the same time. And Jonathan Glazer loved it.
I love to be challenged by the material. I like to push the form as much as I can, you know, and this story felt to me like it was a perfect, fertile idea for finding a language, a visual vocabulary to tell a story, hopefully in a very unexpected way.
It was originally a much more traditional sci-fi film, with big set pieces, a lot of backstory, and big expensive effects. But the more they went into the process, the more they stripped it down into its core idea: an alien learning about humanity. They removed every scene in the script that did not involve her, and from that point on, everything had to serve that core foundation. And whether successful or not, whether I even liked it or not, what always gets me excited is when filmmakers try something bold and original.